This quirky, vibrant fruit has a name straight out of a fantasy novel. It looks like a prop from Game of Thrones, and cultivation often starts with these 12-inch stems.
In this episode of So Where's It From? We're unpeeling the story of one of the world's most striking fruits, dragon fruit.
And get this, it's technically a berry, and it comes from a cactus.
To tell this story, I'm heading to a province in the Philippines, where one family is turning this neon-coloured wonder
That's insane.
into a global business. Dragon fruit doesn't originally come from the Philippines, and the country isn't even a top producer, which makes this tale even more interesting. Their journey to get here
Is one of colonial trade routes, prized ornamental flowers, and a little bit of mystery.
To complete the story, I've got to mention Vietnam, Guatemala, and Mexico. But for most of this episode, we'll be just north of Manila, the capital of the Philippines.
Righto, it is 7 a.m. on a Thursday morning, and today I'm heading to a dragon fruit farm in somewhere called Bulacan in the Philippines to meet a bunch of dragon fruit growers, which is a sentence I thought I'd never say. It's a giant dragon fruit.
This is the Bulacan Dragon Fruit Depot. Founded and managed by the Eliscupides family. It all began as a personal journey when one family member was diagnosed with cancer. Searching for a natural healing solution, the family landed on dragon fruit, so they began growing it in their backyard. Today, they're a full-blown farm and curators of the largest collection of hybrid dragon fruit varieties in the world.
We produce over 200 varieties here at Dragon Fruit Depot, and this is one of our newest ones.
The driving force behind it all is Kevin, who, within minutes of meeting me, explains that the depot's work goes beyond fruit. They also grow dragon fruit planting materials that are shipped around the world.
We have sent to Canada.
Canada?
Yep.
At first, I'm mighty impressed, but also slightly thrown off, because I thought we were just dealing with fruits. And suddenly I'm wondering, how do you ship a plant? Are dragon fruits really that popular? And what actually is a dragon fruit?
To start with, let's just cover the basics.
A dragon fruit is the fruit of a climbing cactus. Yep, cactus. Parts of the Solenocerius genus. In some places, it's called a strawberry pear, pitahaya or pitaya.
Which is confusing, because pitaya tends to be used for a different cactus root, and it looks like this.
Dragon fruit is technically a berry, and there are many species of it, leading to a bunch of different colours.
But I'll be honest, I often think they look way better than they taste.
Aside from their looks, what makes them super impressive is that they're part of a rare group of fruits that come from a night-blooming flower.
But what does that actually mean?
To help visualise all this, we've got to head back to the depot, where Kevin's cousin Jen gives us a proper intro.
The area is 400 square meters, planted with 700 cuttings.
Seeing dragon fruit thrive in the Philippines is unusual, and I'm a bit confused because it's a cactus, yet somehow it seems to love the rain, heat, and humidity.
Holy smokes, my eyebrows are sweating.
So this variety is called Tricia. The traditional way of farming of dragon fruit is the post type.
By the time we've toured the farm and explored the different planting techniques, Jen has cleared things up. Turns out, dragon fruit isn't your classic desert cactus. It's a tropical variety built to thrive in heat and humidity. That's why Southeast Asia, and the Philippines in particular, provide the perfect environment for it to flourish. Now, when it comes to the actual farming, at least here at the depot, it all begins with a 12-inch cutting planted beside a support post. Once it takes root, the cactus climbs upward, sends out long vines, and within a few years, it's ready for harvest. But before any fruit forms, there's an incredible show that involves the flower. It all starts as a small bud, swelling slowly until it's about the size of your forearm. The team tracks each bloom closely because each flower opens for just one night. And that one night is the only window to pollinate.
You will witness the blooming of these flowers.
Luckily, we got to see this for ourselves. But to do that, we had to return after nightfall.
So we now know what dragon fruit is and how it's grown, but we still don't know how it got to the Philippines and where it actually comes from.
Today, dragon fruit is cultivated in dozens of countries and is sometimes labelled as a high-value exotic fruit. Market data often shows Vietnam, China and Indonesia as the top producers, which is interesting because it didn't originate in any of these countries. Long before it went global, this curious cactus fruit had its roots halfway across the world.
In Latin America.
Specifically Mexico and Central America. And we know this thanks to botanical research and indigenous references. In the 1500s, there was this manuscript compiled by a Franciscan friar with indigenous Nahua elders. It's called La Historia General de las Cosas de Nueva España, and it's one of the most renowned historic sources of ancient Mexico. Its illustrations don't exactly scream dragon fruits as we know it today, but there are loads of references to cactus fruits in the Nahuatl language, some of which match up with dragon fruit.
Now, Mexico and Central America cover a pretty large area, so pinpointing dragon fruit's exact origin is kind of tricky.
However, thanks to modern botanical institutes, we now know the most common type, pink skin, white flesh, is native to the tropical forests of Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Mexico. How did it get to Asia? We'll get there in a minute. But first, it's back to the Bulacan Dragon Fruit Depot for a bit of nighttime pollination.
It's nighttime, as you can probably tell. And it feels weird to be walking through a bunch of dragon fruit tentacles.
When it comes to pollination, in the wild it would be bats and moths doing the job. But on farms, it's down to people.
A pollination team has assembled.
In our case, when we arrived, the flowers were still slowly blooming, and after an hour, the rain, and 20 blooms in all their glory. After seeing them in person, I've got to admit, they really do deserve their nickname.
The Queen of the Night.
As for human pollination, it's actually pretty simple and involves collecting the pollen with a little brush, then transferring that to the stigma, the female part. What happens next is kind of sad, because once the flowers bloom for that one night, they close up and die. But that is when the fruit starts to grow, and after about a month, you can finally harvest. Before dragon fruit became a global sensation, it went on a pretty epic journey.
So, in the 1500s, you've got Spain via Mexico causing havoc in East Asia.
The Philippines becomes a colony and a trade route is set up with Mexico, connecting the cities of Manila and Acapulco. Now, I couldn't find solid proof, but plenty of sources mention that at some point during this trade, dragon fruit hitched a ride, arriving in the Philippines in the 16th century. Over the next 300 years, it spread slowly across East Asia, mainly as an ornamental plant and because of that awesome flower.
It wasn't until the 80s and 90s that commercial production really kicked off,
with Vietnam leading the charge and being the first country to sell dragon fruit on the world market.
In the Philippines, commercial farming didn't seem to start until the 80s.
But today, it's become such a valuable crop that the government is apparently helping communities start their own farms. And that's what makes the Bulacan depot kind of clever. They don't just grow the fruit, they're selling planting materials, and the demand for it is massive.
We just released around 12,000 cuttings last week.
When I was there, I saw 2 families collecting their own starter kit, which was awesome, but it did make me think, how do you actually ship or courier a plant? According to Kevin, shipping dragon fruit plants is actually quite straightforward. First, you've got to slice up your cacti to create cuttings that are around 12 inches, so they can fit into a specific box. Then, buyers can choose if they want rooted or non-rooted cuttings. Rooted take a bit more time because they've got to grow roots. Then, before they're shipped, every bit of soil has to be washed off because of the various import laws. Once that's all done, the thorns are removed so they don't stab each other in transit, and they're then packed in those set boxes for their global journeys. And those journeys are far, because they've shipped to places like Ghana, Lebanon, Greece, India, and even Guatemala, which is crazy considering that's one of the countries that it comes from.
So, we've now got a pretty good picture of dragon fruit.
Where it comes from, how it's grown, and even how it's shipped around the world. But there's still one question that's been bugging me since I started making this episode.
How did we end up calling it dragon fruit?
I mean, I get why it has this name. Some varieties properly look like a dragon's egg, but where did the name actually come from? According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the term dragon fruit has only been around since the 1960s. Before that, you mostly see pitahaya or pitaya, which are indigenous words from the Americas. These are now used in Spanish, but for some reason didn't really catch on in English. At some point, when the fruit made its way through East Asia, it picked up this epic name, and from what I could find, it seems to have happened in Vietnam.
Now, there is a bit of myth around the naming of the fruits, but as they say, never let truth get in the way of a good story.
So, one tale in Vietnam pins the naming of dragon fruit to a prince in the late 1700s. Whilst defending a besieged city in the south of Vietnam, locals secretly brought the prince and his soldiers food, including a curious cactus fruit. Delighted by the unusual look and taste, the prince took it as a good omen, so he named the fruit and plant Tan Long, meaning green-blue dragon, also the name of one of the great dragon spirits in Eastern mythology. Another simpler origin for the name is just that many Vietnamese thought the climbing cactus looked like a dragon's body wrapped around a post, which also does make a lot of sense.
Either way, the name stuck, and once translated back into English, it seems dragon fruit was the obvious choice.
So when Vietnam began exporting in the 90s, the marketing teams must have loved it, because let's be honest, if you're picking fruit off a shelf, dragon fruit has a pretty good ring to it.
Names aside, the last thing I really wanted to unpeel is the flavour.
Before filming this episode, the only dragon fruit I'd ever eaten was the classic pink skin, white flesh variety, the one you seem to see everywhere. And I remember the first moment I tried it, because I thought,
wow, that was disappointing. And I'll stick by that, because I honestly think they look way better than they taste.
When I mentioned this to Kevin at the depot in Bulacan, it's almost as if he wanted me to say that, because it meant he could talk about the hundreds of varieties they grow, all with different colours, flavours and sweetness levels. I wasn't totally convinced until he handed me one of their great red hybrids, and this thing lived up to the name. It wasn't just red, it was fluorescent. And the flavour?
I like cantaloupe mixed with strawberries. Wow. That's so sweet.
As a little sciencey side note, that intense red-purple colour comes from beta-cyanins, a group of natural pigments that includes betanin, the same stuff that gives beetroots their colour. Except, unlike beetroots, dragon fruit doesn't taste like soil. So, flavour-wise, hybrids completely change the story. They take a dramatic-looking fruit and finally give it a taste that matches the hype.
However, as I realised whilst making this episode, that final flavour might be important, but it is just one part of a much bigger picture.
Behind every variety, every colour, every hybrid is a story of people experimenting, adapting and building livelihoods around a cactus that blooms for just one night. What started as a climbing cactus in the forests of Central America and Mexico
Travelled across oceans on galleon ships,
turned into an ornamental plant in East Asia,
got rebranded as a mythical creature,
and is now an exotic fruit farmed in dozens of countries around the world, including the Philippines, in a family farm just north of Manila.
whether you call it strawberry pear, pitahaya, dragon fruit or pitaya, this fruit
It's kind of a symbol of how ideas, like plants, travel, adapt, and take root in new places.
So, next time you see a dragon fruit, remember, its story is way wilder than its name.